My parents immigrated to America from China before I was born. My dad arrived in the late 80s, my mom in the 90s. They were financially burdened since they had no savings at the time and had to pay off the house. Because of this, my parents had to work constantly. They couldn't afford daycare, so I spent 10 to 12 hours alone most days throughout my childhood. My mom and dad knew this was illegal, so they told me that if I didn't want them to go to jail, I couldn't tell anyone I was home alone, and I had to be especially careful that the neighbors didn't find out. This took an emotional and mental toll on me. For much of elementary and middle school, I dealt with feelings of fear and anxiety. On days when I was home alone, I would turn off all the lights in our house and draw all the curtains. My only companions were the cartoon characters on the PBS shows I would watch. Whenever someone rang the doorbell, I would hide behind the couch. I felt like they could somehow see me through the door. At school, whenever my friends asked if I wanted to hang out, I made up the excuse that I was going to my aunt's or grandparents' house. I remember my parents telling me if I ever got sick at school, I could not go to the nurse's office because I would be sent home and no one would be there to take care of me. One day, I fell sick at school. The teachers told me I had to go to the nurse. They took my temperature and informed me that I had a 101-degree fever. The nurse called my parents to pick me up, but my aunt showed up an hour later. She took me home and made me soup, but eventually had to go home. I cuddled up in my parents' bed. The familiarity of their scent brought me a sense of comfort as I watched Chinese dubbed Garfield on DVD and sipped my soup. I stayed there until my parents finally came home. When I was younger, my family situation made me angry. I wish my parents were there to guide me through the mysteries of adolescence. I loathed that my family was different from everyone else's. I was already seen as a foreigner. I couldn't speak English until grade school. I ate different food than the kids at my school. Because my parents did not speak the best English and were always working, they never came to my school events. I couldn't hang out with my friends and I didn't have a babysitter. My parents' financial situation and its impacts exacerbated the alienation I already felt as a first-generation kid in America. After middle school, my dad was able to buy the restaurant where he worked as a waiter. Things got better after that. My mom didn't have to work as much and was able to stay at home more. I finally had someone to confide in when I had fights with friends at school or boy problems. When I got to high school, I made my first Asian friends, many of whom shared similar experiences with me. Growing up and finding people who understood me allowed me to better process my childhood and relate to my parents. I realized the necessity of the sacrifices they made for me. Now that I'm older, I don't resent my parents for anything, but I do realize a lot of the mental struggles I'm dealing with right now originated from my childhood and from absent parents. I have to work through that now, but I no longer hold any anger towards them. I can see now that my parents sacrificed even more than I did. They came with no friends or money. I at least knew I had a home, food on the table, and friends at school, all of which I took for granted. As a child, I yearned to have the life of a normal kid, but normal looks different for everyone. My experiences, although challenging, shaped me into an independent, proud Chinese American woman.